In this lesson, you're going to learn guitar shell voicings. This is such an amazing approach to be able to play simple jazz guitar chords and accurately interpret literally any jazz chord from any jazz tune using as few as 8 simple chord shapes. For years, I've been teaching this shell voicings method, and I even put the whole approach into a free PDF booklet called Any Jazz Chord. In this video, we're just going to go through that method exactly as it's laid out in that PDF booklet. So if you want to get a copy and follow along, you can grab it from the link in the description or go to soundguitarlessons.com/anyjazzchord. So imagine that you are jamming with some friends. Things are sounding pretty good. You're feeling confident. Then someone pulls out the lead sheet of a jazz tune and they ask you to play the chords while they play the melody and improvise over it. You take a look and you see chords like G major 9, sharp 11, C sharp minor 7, flat 5, F sharp 7, flat 9, flat 13, or B minor major 9. How would you do if that happened to you right now, if you had to play those on the spot? If your answer was not so great, then I'm excited for you because you're about to learn this simple system to be able to play any jazz chord with easy movable chord shapes with as few as 8 of them. I know it sounds too good to be true. It sounds like an infomercial or something like that, but it's really real. So if it's real, what's the trade-off, right? There must be some sort of catch. This must be some sort of beginner method that doesn't sound legit, doesn't sound professional, but that's not the case. One of my favorite things about this is that even the best of the best guitar players, the super pros, they will often opt for these exact chord shapes, even when they know a bunch of other stuff, just because it's the sound they want to hear, because it's a sound that provides some clarity and some space to the music. This approach is about making sure that you have 2 accurate chord shapes that you can fluidly jump to for literally any chord type that exists in jazz harmony. In addition, these chord types serve as a really great foundation to later build more complex harmony on top of, such as chord extensions and alterations and substitutions and stuff like that. I'm excited for you to see how well it works. First, let's explain what shell voicings are. With all the extensions and variables and possibilities included, there are 60 plus different chord quality types that you could play. Chord qualities are like major, minor, diminished. Those are qualities. So over 60 different chord quality types. But with all of them, there is an essential core that really defines the true essence of each chord. That essential part actually provides all the information that is really needed for any chord. In jazz harmony, these essential versions of chords are often referred to as shell voicings. Shell voicings are interpretations of chords where we only play 3 of the notes. Again, the essential information, which is going to be the root, the 3rd, and the 7th of the chord very often. Also variations of that, like you could play the 6 instead of the 7, for example, and you'll see exactly what I mean. Playing those notes actually creates kind of a complete sound and kind of a cleaner sound, and technically it's all we need. The root is the root, so we need that, though there are types of chords that are called rootless voicings, and I'll be talking about that later in this lesson series. But the other 2 notes other than the root, the 3rd and the 7, these are often referred to as guide tones because they are, again, that essential piece of the chord that really determines the quality of the chord and determines the motion and the function of the chord. For example, without the 3, you can't tell if a chord is major or minor. Without the 7, you won't be able to know if it's dominant 7 or not. Without the 3 or the 7, chords become ambiguous and we can't really tell what actual harmony they're supposed to be representing. So with these shell voicings, we're not playing the 5 of chords, but that doesn't mean the 5 is gone. The 5 is actually still a part of the chord. We're just allowed to not play it. And that's actually very common in voice leading, in composition. Ditching the 5 is the first note that is okay to get rid of. And it's implied that it's still there, even though we're not playing it. Using shell voicings, we can play any of those 60 plus chord quality types that I mentioned with just a handful of 3-note, movable, simple, easy chord shapes by ignoring all of the information that is not totally necessary. Now, the idea of not playing all of those tasty extra notes might be a little disappointing, like the flat 9, flat 13, sharp 9, stuff like that. But don't worry, we'll definitely get there. We're setting up a foundation to build on top of, and it will make adding those kinds of extensions way, way easier later. But also, a very important part of this is that these chord voicings are often again, the desirable one. They allow breathing room, and they allow room for the melodic material to define the harmonic quality a little more, kind of prevents us from stepping on the toes of other things that are going on in the music. For now, you can just think of all of those extra bits of information as still important and part of the music. They might represent what's happening in the melody. They might help an improviser select a certain scale that they would play over a chord. And so all of that is still there. We're just providing this very essential bed underneath everything else to happen on top of. And I would argue that especially if you're interested in playing jazz, and especially if you want to be able to sight read chord changes like in that scenario I mentioned earlier off of a lead sheet, that you really should have these chord shapes super down and be able to jump to them and sight read them before worrying about adding too many extra other type of chord shapes and extensions. Now let's go over all the shapes you need, and after that we will put it to the test on a bunch of jazz tunes. Any jazz chord can indeed be played with 8 shapes, but we're going to learn 2 versions of each shell voicing, so we're going to have 16 shapes total, a version off the 6th string and a version off the 5th string. I recommend memorizing the shell voicings that are rooted off the 6th string first, and then adding the 5th string chords after that to make it a little easier to move around the fretboard. That being said, we're going to go through each chord type, and I'm just going to give you both shapes at once, 6th string and 5th string version. And just as a side note, you can definitely play shell voicings off of the 4th string and off of even the 3rd string as well, but where they're most commonly played is off the 6th string and 5th string, and having 2 options for each chord type is plenty. All right, shape number 1 is major 7. You'll see that I have the spelling of the chord, the full spelling, 1, 3, 5, 7, and the 5 is included in the spelling because again, it is a part of the chord, we're just not playing it. So remember that we're not playing the 5 even though those spellings are there. I also have the chord symbols that often represent these chords, like MAJ7 or capital M7, triangle, triangle 7. Those could all mean major 7. So you have that as part of the diagrams as well. And then we have our shapes. So here's the root, 7, and 3rd. For all of the 6th string shapes, we're skipping the 5th string. We're not playing the 5th string. If you're strumming this, you have to make sure that's muted with one of your fingers and kind of clicks. If you're plucking, then you don't have to worry about that as much. This is G major 7. I'm going to go over here. Root, 3rd, 7, G major 7. Shape number 2 is major 6. My last video was all about 6th chords. So this is a 6th chord without the 5, root, 6, 3. That's our shell voicing. Off the 5th string, root, 3rd, 6th. That's our shell voicing. Shape number 3 is dominant 7, root, flat 7, 3 off the 6th string, and root, 3rd, flat 7 off of the 5th string. Shape number 4 is minor 7, root, flat 7, flat 3 off the 6th string. Notice that when I go to the 5th string, the top 2 notes just flip, root, flat 3, flat 7. So we had root, flat 7, flat 3, root, flat 3, flat 7. So just an interesting way to look at it. Our next chord type is minor 7, flat 5. This is also called half diminished. This is its own chord type, but the difference between minor 7 and half diminished is that the 5 is flat. So it's spelled 1, flat 3, flat 5, flat 7. We're not playing 5s for shell voicings, so we get a freebie. This is still shape number 4, but you use the same shape as minor 7 when you are interpreting half diminished. And you see all those crazy symbols there, a circle with a line through it, or minor 7 flat 5, or all of those could mean this chord, half diminished, or minor 7 flat 5. So we have that same shape here, root, flat 7, flat 3, root, flat 3, flat 7. Shape number 5 is dominant 7, sus 4. A few videos ago, I talked about sus chords. This is a sus chord with a flat 7 in it. Root, flat 7, 4. The 4 replaced the 3. This will often resolve to the normal dominant 7 before it moves on, but by itself also can just be hanging out. Okay, 5th string, root, 4, flat 7. Shape number 6, minor 6. This was also in the last video, talked about minor 6 chords and their theory. We have the root, the 6, and the flat 3. That's a minor 6 chord. That's the mysterious Spy soundtrack chord. And we have root, flat 3, 6 off the 5th string. Okay, we're still on shape number 6 because we get another freebie here. Minor 6 and diminished 7 use the same shape, but with different spellings. So I'll show you a different chord diagram with the different spellings, but the shape is the same. Diminished is spelled 1, flat 3, flat 5, double flat 7. Don't worry about what that means right now, double flat 7. That's not what we need to get into at the moment, but just know that it's labeled as that. So we have root, double flat 7, and flat 3. What used to be the 6, we're now calling double flat 7. They are the same note. That's called inharmonic equivalent. Root, flat 3, double flat 7. So those are the same shape when you see diminished 7 or minor 6. And again, the reason they're the same shape is because the only difference between minor 6 and diminished 7 structure-wise is the flat 5. So diminished 7 has a flat 5, minor 6 does not. We're not playing 5s, that's why we get the same shape. So now we're on shape number 7. This is minor major 7. This is a minor triad with a major 7. It's a very crunchy chord. Pretty rarely is used on its own, though it is sometimes. It's very, very often, most commonly seen in this progression. That moving progression, that it's the Stairway to Heaven sound. Triad, minor major 7, minor 7, minor 6 with that moving line there. So 1, 7, flat 3 is minor major 7, or 1, flat 3, major 7, 1, flat 3, 7, off the 5th string. Shape number 8 is major triad. This is down the list because it's actually pretty rare that you'll see it in a jazz tune. If you're, again, flipping through the real book and a bunch of jazz tunes, triads will come up, just not very often. They'll come up more often in more modern compositions, like Pat Metheny uses a lot of triads in his compositions, but traditional jazz tunes and standards very rarely use triads. So here's the shape that we want, root 5, 3. This time we're skipping the D string or the 4th string. And then the voicing off of, and then the voicing that we're thinking of as rooted off the 5th string, the root is here, but we're actually gonna play 5 on the bottom, 5, 3, root. That's just the most compatible way to play a triad. That combines well and actually sounds good when you're playing shell voicings around it. You don't want to be playing a bunch of shell voicings and then suddenly play this big, bold kind of pop music triad. It's just not gonna fit. So we get this nice minimal triad that is spaced apart in its own way. That's 8 shapes. We have one more chord type though to address, and that's minor triad. And this is just a repeat of shape number 4 because I want you to interpret any minor triad as minor 7 in this system. That's pretty safe to do. There's maybe a very rare instance where that's not the intended harmony underneath, where a minor triad doesn't kind of imply that a minor 7 could be there, but almost always if you see a minor triad, you are accurately representing the scale that that chord comes from by playing a minor 7 shape. So we're repeating that shape, root, flat 3, flat 7, root, flat 7, flat 3. All right, those are all the chord types and all the shapes that we need. Pretty exciting. I mean, they're very approachable chord shapes and you really can play any tune. We're gonna put it to the test in a second. We need to first talk about what to ignore though. In order to not get hung up on all those complex chords, we need to ignore the following things. We're ignoring 5s. We already know that. That's what a shell voicing is. So anything related to a 5, we are ignoring. We're ignoring slash chords. When you see a slash and then a letter underneath a slash, so like G7 over B is how you would call that, G7 slash B, that's a slash chord. Sometimes it's referring to an inversion of a chord. Sometimes it's an interesting complex poly chord or something like that, but we get to just ignore it. If you're playing with a bass player ever, they will play that bottom note always. So I even recommend specifically not playing it if someone else is gonna represent that low end note that is being asked for. Even if you don't have a bass player though, and you just ignore that bottom letter, the slash chord, totally fine. You're still accurately playing a chord. What you're missing maybe is some specific melodic root movements or bass movements that are intended to happen in the progression, but you're still accurately playing the chord. It's gonna fit and support the song exactly as it should. And sometimes that bottom note in a slash chord being added actually changes the sound of the harmony significantly, but still for our purposes here, we're just gonna ignore it. You're not playing anything wrong by only playing the top part. You're just maybe missing out on adding some crunchiness that's intended in the harmony, but that's totally fine. We are of course ignoring extensions. So 9, flat 9, sharp 9, 11, sharp 11, 13, flat 13, all of those, you just ignore them. You can easily learn how to add these later on top of the shell voicings, and that's gonna be really fun, and we'll do that very soon in a couple videos from now. But something important to note here, when you see any of these extended numbers alone by themselves, just a 9, like a G9, you have to pretend that it says 7. If you see just G13, you have to pretend that that says 7. So you just turn everything into 7. You see A minor 11, you pretend it says A minor 7. D9, you treat as D7. D major 13, you treat as D major 7. If those extended numbers come after a 7, like G7 flat 13 or A major 7 sharp 11, that's when you just totally ignore them. You obviously just play the first part. All right, we are ready to put it to the test. Let's see if we can play any jazz chord that comes up with just those shapes that I just taught you. Obviously, in order to do this, we need to be able to find note names along the 6th and 5th string. If you're not comfortable with finding the notes along the 6th or 5th string, you can use this diagram that shows them for you. This exact diagram is in the PDF booklet. Grab a lead sheet for any jazz tune. A lead sheet is a version of sheet music that just shows only the melody and the chord symbols. Use whatever resource you want for finding a lead sheet. If you don't have anything, if you just Google a tune name and type in lead sheet, an image should come up for especially popular tunes. But I highly recommend using an application called iReal Pro. It's available on any device, and it's a super awesome resource that tons of jazz musicians are using all the time to access and practice along with thousands of chord progressions of tunes. I'm not affiliated with them in any way. It's just a resource that I use and recommend. So download the app, and once you download it, there's up in the left corner here, Forums tab. Click on the Forums tab, and that will take you to the forums. Click on to get jazz tunes. You can get all kinds of things, but on the top here it says jazz. You click on that, and then there should be a, here it is, jazz 1350 standards. So 1,350 standards. We're clicking on that, and then I'm going to go up here, and I believe that is going to download it for me. I'm going to click on that. There we go, jazz 1,350, and then it's going to open it in the iReal Pro app. And it says import. I already have it, so I'm not going to import, but all you got to do is click import here. And there we go. Now I have my list here. That's awesome. You're gonna have over 1,300 jazz tunes. Here's all these tunes. So now we can just click through randomly and really put this method to the test and see if any chord stumps us. Can we play any chord we find with the shapes I just taught you? This is just a tune that was pulled up here, dancing on the ceiling. I don't know this tune at all. Let's go ahead and say, okay, we know how to play F minor 6. I find F, I'm sorry, F major 6, find F, that's F6. F7, no problem. We ignore that slash chord. B flat 6, that's B flat major 6, C7, A minor 7, A flat minor 7, G minor 7, C7. They're all available to us. D7, we ignore that flat 9, G minor 7, C7. See, it's all in here. So I'm just going to scan for anything that's going to throw us off. C9 sus. In the B section there, we have G minor 7 and then C9 sus. So we're going to treat it as C7 sus. We certainly have a chord for that. So C7 sus, C7, F major 7, etc. So we don't need to go through all of them. I want to click on a few other tunes, jump around just to really put it to the test. All right, another one, C major 7, B7, E half diminished, and that's the minor 7 shape every time we see that. A7. You see how well this works? I mean, the sound is exactly what we need. B flat 9 is, again, B flat 7. That's dominant 7. You just replace that 9 with a 7. A minor 7, F sharp half diminished, that minor 7 shape. It's everything we need. It really works. Okay, A flat 9, sharp 11. So it takes some getting used to because you have to think of that as A flat 7 and ignore that sharp 11. So A flat 7, G7, everything's good to go. We got everything we need. Let's do another random one. I'm gonna go to a ballad because ballads tend to have some, I wanna try to find some weird stuff because I want it to be challenging to make sure that this system works, right? So, F minor triad. Okay, we're gonna treat that as minor 7. And like I said, you're pretty safe doing that. C7, F minor 7, D half diminished, okay, B flat minor 7, okay, C7, sus flat 9, so we do the C7 sus. Anything weird? We got a B flat minor 6 down in that section at the bottom there, so that's cool. We haven't seen that yet in our test. Okay, you get the point. We could search through that forever and we have all those chord shapes we need. Just to demonstrate how it sounds with real music, I'm gonna play the chords using just those shapes to a tune, Manha de Carnaval, also called Black Orpheus. I'm gonna play the melody on top of it, and so we can hear it in the context of really making music. to practice the chord changes of any specific tune and get it down, here are some that I recommend. Fly Me to the Moon, The Girl from Ipanema, Autumn Leaves, Dream a Little Dream of Me, My Funny Valentine. Those should all be available through iReal Pro. So now you can do it. You can play the chords of any jazz tune with just those chord shapes that we learned. Any jazz musician wanting to jam or improvise or sing, they need someone to provide the chords and the harmony underneath. Now you have what it takes to be able to do that. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. If you found this valuable, please hit that thumbs up for me. If you know anyone who plays guitar who you think might be interested in being able to do this, please share this video with them. I think you'll have a lot of fun playing songs with this method. And once you're comfortable with them, then we're ready to start actually exploring those extensions. You can always ignore all that extra information, but we want to learn about those too and use them when we want the sound. And then we want to use the shell voicings when we want that sound. So we're following what we actually want to express and what we want to feel with the music. In the next 2 videos, I'm going to go over the theory of 9s, 11s, and 13s, extended chords, and how to start applying them to chords in general in the first video, and then the next video after that to specifically applying them to these shell voicings so we can beef up our jazz playing and provide some thicker textures, again, when and if we want to. So don't miss those videos. I'm Jared from soundguitarlessons.com. This was episode 15 of my series on how to learn guitar chords. See you in another lesson soon. Happy practicing, and thanks so much.